Good morning. Our prelude this morning was Hymn by Liz Story. It was beautiful. Thank you. Whether you're participating online or you're here in person, we say welcome home to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Linda McCullough, and I'm so glad you're here. For our guests, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the Live Oak weekly newsletter. It's the go-to place to know everything that's happening here. There is a link on our homepage. Thanks to all for your continued care in following the current guidelines for in-person service so we can provide a safe environment, as safe an environment as possible during what remains a challenging time. Masking is optional outdoors for vaccinated people, but please put one on if you go into the building. We ask children to remain under parent supervision. We hum rather than sing to songs, and use gestures of respect and connection other than hugs to greet each other. And we keep a sense of humor during it all. And now, here and at home, let us light our chalices. A Flame to Light Our Path by Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. Our opening hymn is Just as Long as I Have Breath, performed by the Live Oak Choir.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my ways, to with hope I need to stay. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
I'd like to introduce the Reverend Jami Yandle, a Unitarian Universalist minister and a board-certified hospice chaplain serving in Austin. And I have to add this in, that they have a special place in my heart as an old 18-year retired hospice nurse. Additionally, they also work as a consultant within the UUA, focusing on creating trauma-informed care in congregations. Welcome, Reverend Yandle. Every week when we gather, we share pieces of our lives with each other. We share our sorrows so that they may offer comfort to one another, and we share our joys so that we may celebrate together. Today we share a joy from Cassie. Me and my dad are to the movies today. In this religious community, we hold with reverence the knowledge that each week a multitude of different emotions and experiences are brought together into this space. One of us may be celebrating, one weeping, one filled with determination, one with despair. This mosaic of experiences is holy, and we honor all with our witness. Today's big idea is by Shane W. Evans. It's called We March. This is a lovely book. We march. The morning is quiet. The sun rises, and we prepare to march. Here. We pray for strength. We work together. We come from all over to march. We walk together. We sing. We are hot and tired, but we are filled with hope. We lean on each other. As we march for justice. To our dreams. On August 28, 1963, more than 250,000 people gathered in our nation's capital to participate in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The march began at Washington Monument and ended with a rally at the Lincoln Memorial, where iconic musicians such as Mahalia Jackson, Bob Dylan, and Joan Baez performed. And Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his historic I Have a Dream speech. Throughout history, there have been many organized marches when people walked together to advance a common goal. The Selma to Montgomery March, which consisted of 3 separate marches that took place in March of 1965, was held to focus attention on the civil rights movement and the need for outlawing racial discrimination. The routes are now memorialized as the Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights Trail. Following these marches, the country enacted 2 pieces of legislation that were crucial for moving the country toward racial equality. The first was the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned racial segregation in public schools, public places, and in select workplaces. The second was the National Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed discriminatory voting practices that denied many African Americans the right to vote. It takes people of all ages and cultural backgrounds to move a nation into a new era of freedom. In a sense, these marches pushed old ideas out of the way and moved new ideas forward. History shows that where there is change, there will often be resistance to change. However, these events demonstrate that through action and determination, people have the power to overcome that resistance. I have always been inspired by the idea of people coming together, joining hands in prayer, lifting their voices in song, and marching towards freedom. And you young people, you children especially, ask people like me, people my age, what it was like to be in the middle of the 1960s, because we all remember these things. They were not fun. Every week, we engage in the spiritual practice of generosity, combining our resources to support the ministries of this church. Part of our mission is to empower dreams, and this Sunday we will be sharing the offering with Round Rock Area Service Center to help empower their dreams to offer many services for families and children. If you wish, you may go to liveoakuu.org and click on Donate or place a check in the green box after the service. Our offertory music this morning is Do What Must Be Done, and it's by Bowman Mays, our very own.
Well, I've learned as a child 2 ways to see it, the way the world is and the way it should be. Some people say that's just not my problem. Some people do what must be done. They see the hole in the fabric, there must be some. They see the way blockaded, and they roll back the stone. They see the day beyond the horizon, and they do what must be done. And they do what must be done. Some people do what must be done. Do what must be done. They see the way beyond the horizon, and they do what must be done. I've seen the toll taken, the tears that were shed. I've seen the journey started and the ripples spread. Some people say that's just not my problem. Some people do what must be done. 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 Do what must be done. They see the way beyond the horizon and do what must be done. And do what must be done. And do what must be done. And do what must be done.
So good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. Before I begin my sermon, I just wanted to share with all of you that I moved to Texas 6 months ago. What an honor and privilege it is to be with you this morning. And for the record, I am falling in love with Austin. I'm learning the city through parks and restaurants. The other day I had something called cowboy queso, and it blew my mind. I don't know, what I was having before was this lukewarm cheese situation, so I won't ever go back. I moved to Austin from a small town where most of the residents did not believe COVID is real. And I felt like the only liberal person for miles and miles. During this time, I tried very hard to maintain some sense of self. I felt like something as simple as going to the grocery store was automatically, exponentially harder because I just didn't blend in. I looked so different than most of the residents. There were Trump signs everywhere I went, and church marquees regularly informed passerbys of how they were most assuredly going to hell. If we all didn't stop sinning, we were going to go to hell. If you didn't accept Jesus, you're going to hell. I was going to go to hell for being gay and also being transgender. Everybody was going to hell. And as an out queer person, I had the kind of right archetype to go to hell. I didn't accept it. The nearest UU church was over an hour away, so I had to dig deep to maintain my sense of self. This is when I learned about joy as resistance. I had to work very hard to find and keep my happiness, which meant hours at the one hiking trail in town, which thankfully was tucked between this way off place in the middle of the woods where nobody would be able to find it, and there were secret trails, and I was able to just work everything out on the trails. On those trails where I hiked, I worked out my anger and sadness, and soon enough the trees and crunchy ground from all the leaves melted my grievances entirely away. I thought a lot about how my joy was resistance. The conservatives in that city who were eager to get me into their church to rid me of my sin would not win. I would show them that one could be both marginalized and happy, because I was. I was living the truest life I could, because years before I had done the careful work to liberate myself so I could liberate my people, and I could weather the storm exactly like that one. I had done a lot of work to come out of the closet in both my sexuality and gender identity and expression. I was happier and healthier after I came out, and no one can or will strip me of that kind of self-celebration I have in honoring my true and authentic self. This kind of power where I made myself confident, almost invincible, in a very sacred sort of powerful way is where joy is born. It is linked to our humanity. It's not a new concept. Audre Lorde wrote about it in the 1970s. She explored using this energy of change for good. She wrote, "The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them and lessens the threat of their difference." The energy she wrote about is palpable, and it is a tool in change. It is the same energy that helped Martin Luther King Jr. sing and yell joyfully at rallies and protests. And that joy brought us to the beginning of the civil rights. When I was present at Occupy Wall Street as a protest chaplain, we definitely had songs of happiness that created joy. We noticed on days that we sang louder and more in unison, there were far less arrests. The night we were raided by police, we failed to have any music. It was late, and most of the occupiers, as well as our chaplains present that night, including myself, put away our guitars and bullhorns to get some rest. I always wondered what would have happened if we sang into the night. What effect would that have, and would it have been enough to keep the cops away? I learned recently my thinking made sense. Research shows the evidence of bodily connection when joy is present. Singing or humming together does a beautiful thing in the human body. Heartbeats will match when two or more persons are on the same note in the same song together. And musicians play a riff in conjunction that have been observed to having the same parts of their brain lit up at the same time. These experiences of unison create a connectivity that runs through all things. And this connectivity is needed for our very survival. Today is the first day of Hanukkah, and Elie Wiesel once described a memory of a fellow prisoner trading a ration of bread for materials, which would, I knew that was gonna happen, I tried to put the rocks up, which would use to be pieced together to make shift a menorah during Hanukkah. Shocked the man would trade something so essential to his survival, Wiesel asked him, "Hanukkah and Auschwitz?" And the man replied, "Especially in Auschwitz." Jewish people utilized their community to have celebration that night. They needed to huddle together and laugh and smile a little to get through the next grueling days and those after. Thank you. The Nazi guards, try as they might, were unable to steal Elie Wiesel's joy and hope. The language of oppression is one of scarcity and fear, and joy is a nonviolent way to protest oppression and injustice. It is also needed in the long haul in our present circumstance. There is so much trauma around us, and so many different kinds of hardships we are all living through. Trauma will actually change the plasticity in our brains, creating symptoms of PTSD. But allowing ourselves to feel and cultivate joy is a way to combat it. Joy is especially important in the life of marginalized persons. The work of dismantling white supremacy while also occupying a body of color, for instance, is made much harder. This is why the activist group of Fullerton called Upset Homegirls was formed during the Black Lives Matter protests last year. Typically, protesters move around holding signs, occasionally leading chants, but this group asked folks in attendance at the protest to dance. It is important, even in all that bad space, to bring all of that goodness, said Brandy Factory, a founding member of Upset Homegirls. Because you can't find anything without love, and I think there's a lot of love that's rooted in Black joy. When I think of Unitarian Universalists answering the call to love, this is what I think of. Our yellow shirts and our effervescent spirit at protest calling in love directly in the face of injustices. This is exactly the kind of resilience needed to create cultural and sustained change. So how do we cultivate joy, especially in dismal situations? Because joy is easy to feel at a wedding or a graduation or when something happy happens, but what about the day-to-day? The grind of living up catches up with us. Well, joy can be found all around us if we focus in on it. Things such as the laughter of our grandchild or the way our dog wags their tail when we come home from work. The more we slow down and observe these simple, joyous moments, the more we ourselves become joyous. The sunshine after the rain yesterday is a super great moment. Another way to cultivate joy is to name 3 things you are grateful for. After 30 days of this practice, the pathways in our brains actually change. And we become happier, and the hard things become easier. And bonus, our brains are filled with good chemicals that bring joy. Additionally, self-enrichment can lead us to joy. Taking care of yourself should feel indulgent. You might even feel guilty. That's how you know you're doing it right. Audre Lorde wrote, "Caring for myself is not a self-indulgence, it is a self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." Finding joy in self-enrichment goes beyond drinking a glass of water, because joy isn't about maintenance. It's about a full liberation and freedom. Give yourself permission to do that which brings you joy as often as possible, even if you feel weird, even if it's something that people make fun of you for. Give yourself permission to do that which brings you joy as often as possible. For me, that is playing the guitar. I am not very good at it. It is taking a long time to learn, but the very sound of my guitar makes this sound that brings me immense joy and soothes my soul on a tough day caring for patients with COVID and my job as a hospice chaplain. As a congregation, you can find joy together too. Now through Zoom and this hybrid service here, next week I overheard you'll be gathering in the sanctuary for the first time in a long time. These things will cultivate joy in your congregation, and it'll be amazing to be together in fellowship in that way once again. Other UU congregations are experiencing a similar joy at being able to gather together also. Many UUs are back to serving the community with one another, creating small groups, and finding new and different ways to enjoy the spirit of each other. And it is important to note that happiness is different than joy. Happiness is fleeting and based on external circumstances. But joy is a magical internal thing related to hope. We live in a world that requires us to constantly fight against injustices and rampant pain. We might need something that is more rooted and grounded. Joy, when cultivated and made into a spiritual discipline, is the most important thing besides love to help create a better world and create the world we know is possible. We can only do this with the help of one another. We need more joy than ever to make that possible. I want to see more of that kind of joy which helps everyone know you matter, you are important, and we need each other to survive. I am looking forward to continuing to build with you, knowing that the full incarnation of Unitarian Universalism resides in our bodies and in our congregations. So let us choose joy in each other and pave a way from brokenness to wholeness. Amen, and blessed be. didn't know worship was going to be so exciting this morning with the props. The meditation is Don't Hesitate by Mary Oliver. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. And my benediction is just one sentence. It's by Glennon Doyle. May we all live in communities where every person's truest self is both held and free. Amen and blessed be.
Our closing hymn is This Little Light of Mine, performed by the Live Oak Choir.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Rebecca, I think you have a whole new rhythm section here. We invite you to stay after the service to enjoy fellowship time with one another and faith development well, we don't have any faith development activities today, do we? Okay, never mind. Okay. We ceremonially extinguish this flame, but we recommit anew to carrying into our week the flame of justice and love. May we share with others the courage and strength we find here. Our postlude is Calm Soul of All Things, performed by Daria Tomjanovic. Actually, no, it's not. Okay. It's whatever. Okay.